The 6 to 7 Figure Show, episode 96. Let's hit it.
Broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun outside Phoenix, Arizona. This is the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Tired of working so hard and having no time? Take your six-figure practice and turn it to a thriving seven-figure enterprise. And now, your host, author, speaker, mentor, and strategist, Frank Bria.
Hey everyone, welcome to the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I'm your host, Frank Bria, and in today's episode, we are going to focus on strategic consulting. But first, a quick message from our sponsor. This episode of the 6 to 7 Figure Show is brought to you by High Ticket Program. What's between your six-figure practice and a seven-figure enterprise? Just 12 projects, that's all. Execute those projects and you're there. In the High Ticket Program Accelerator, we guide you through every step of growth and scale in a process we call LEAP. Imagine having a world-class project team guiding you and your team through each and every step of pain-free growth, all with the goal of becoming a seven-figure enterprise and moving away from painful, time-consuming business operations and client delivery. Get a taste of LEAP in your own business by downloading our free high-ticket program core offer Black Book. It contains more than 60 pages of standard operating procedures for your business, including onboarding, customer service, graduation, financial management, and a lot more. You can get that for free by going to the show's homepage, 6to7.show. That's 6to7.show for your free Black Book. I'm absolutely pleased to be introducing today's guest, Carey Rome. Carey is a recovering CPA who somehow can manage both the left and right brain activities. Admittedly, right brain activities kind of where he thrives. But he's an admirer of smart ideas, and Carey is an avid, or as he describes himself, maybe even addicted podcast and audiobook listener. So if you see him with the earbuds in like he is here on video, he's not being rude. He may just be trying to figure out how to better your business. Carey, welcome to the show.
Frank, thank you. It's great to be here. And, you know, I say recovering CPA and somehow it tends to, the somehow really should go somehow was able to pass the CPA exam, because I know accounting and I know the big picture stuff, but I would not call myself the best accountant that there was.
Well, we all sometimes get like thrown into those weird spots. I mean, I started off my career as an actuary, which was a complete mismatch to my personality style. So yeah,
true. But you know, with the school system, at least the way it's designed when you and I went through, you pick something that may not be what you want to do forever. It's just a good foundation. And really that's all I was looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that foundation has led you to start your own consulting firm. So let's talk about that.
Okay.
What kind of consulting do you do? What kind of work, what kind of companies do you work with, and what kinds of problems are you solving?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. We help companies really clarify their vision, get focused, and then we create, using a system that we've developed, we create a way to map it out, and then we supply the team. We build in the subject matter experts to deliver. So I call it sort of the best of strategic consulting and staff augmentation sort of pushed into one firm. That's what we do. We don't leave them high and dry with just a 75 page strategy document, and we don't throw bodies at a problem. It's very focused and targeted, really help drive that vision forward.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that focus on execution is not your standard kind of consulting approach to things. So that's a unique angle.
Well, I'm still trying to figure out if it's I enjoy the work, but maybe I'm just sort of enjoy the torture of it, because execution's tough, right? Yeah. There's a lot of people out there that want to advise you on how to develop a strategy, and then they don't want to be there for execution because it gets ugly. And there are a lot of people that may not want to really shoulder the burden. Hey, we're going to share that burden with you. Yeah. But it's work that we really enjoy, and it's just over and over and over again. We find ourselves in the trenches with an executive, and it's a win-win.
That's nice. Well, it's a huge need. I mean, it's I think anyone who's ever worked with a consulting firm before knows that that's kind of the pejorative. You get great strategy, but then what now? I mean, I don't know if you remember this, but a while back, and I know I'm dating myself here, but I think it's been at least 10, 15 years. There was a good IBM commercial that they used to run where they had the two consultants like coming into the CEO's office and basically said, dropping that, as you laughed at, you joked about the strategy report, like dropping that on the CEO's desk and saying, and there you go, this is exactly what you need to do. And the CEO looks at it and goes, great, let's get it done. And then it sort of cuts to the scene of these two consultants walking away from the building, laughing to each other like, oh, we wanted us to actually do it.
Yeah. When I started the firm, it wasn't as closely paired with strategy. That sort of developed over time. I initially went in with, we help executives solve problems. And the problem could be a myriad of issues that they've encountered. But 5 years into it, I had an executive tell me that, hey, you came and helped me execute on this one key initiative. And that's great. And I really appreciate you doing that. But that wasn't my biggest problem. And of course, when you go in and you're ahead of budget, or you're under budget, you're ahead of schedule, you feel like, oh my gosh, we just knocked it out of the park. And to have an executive tell you that, yes, you did great, but that wasn't my big problem, I really sat back. And what he said was, that's my problem right now. That's my burning problem right now. But 12 and 18 months ago, as an executive, I'm on an island and I've got no one to help me think through not only one piece, but all of the pieces. And he said, you're missing an advisory service. Yeah. And it was just such a moment of clarity for me. And we went from literally chasing problems to doing an advisory first practice that really changed the business. It changed it for us. And then we do that supporting function that we've always done, but quite a journey.
Yeah. Well, and you've pointed out the big problem there is with staff augmentation firms is that, again, they can attack a problem and throw a lot of bodies at it, but is it the right problem to solve? And where that shows up for a lot of those firms where they struggle is that that they'll be at the end of a 1 or 2 year long project. Like you said, they're under budget, they're ahead of schedule. And yet somehow, oddly enough, like they're not getting new business. There's no, people aren't really celebrating because, again, it was like we spent a lot of time working on the thing which turned out not to be the right thing to do.
Exactly.
And that's frustrating for them because then they feel like, well, hey, you told us, but again, that advice you got was brilliant. Yeah. Have that.
Well, and not, this, but not everybody wants to go through the mental exercise to help think critically through what's it going to take. A lot of people just trust that, oh yeah, it's going to be fine or it's going to be okay. And then when people raise their hands, they say, oh my gosh, but that's not the worst thing. The ones that don't raise their hands are the ones that really, really need to be worried about. And we really dig into those and help uncover that.
Yeah. Well, and so let's dig into that a little bit because there's a lot of discussion of strategy consulting. Yeah. A lot of people talk about it, advisory work or strategy work.
Yeah.
But it feels really sort of amorphous and like out there, fuzzy for some people. And even the executive you're trying to sell to, sometimes that feels very fuzzy. Mm-hmm. Is there a process that you guys use that you're taking your executives through that help them identify those high priority and important pieces? But can you walk us through a little bit of that process?
Yeah, Frank, when that executive told me, you're missing an advisory service, the first thing was great. The second thing was, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? Because I need to have a process that I developed. And so I went back and I just sort of digging and sketching, and we created something that is a one-page maps, we call it a roadmap. And then over the years, we've developed that so where it cascades down from a top organizational level, maps through to C-level executives, and then maps to a third level, which is the functional team that's actually doing the work day to day. And along the way, and so we've just been using it, and and we created a little software application that
Nice.
we that pushed out late last year. And when you've been using something that you've developed and you've done it for 10 years, and then you put it into an application and you say, here, do it yourself. What we found out was, well, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to do it myself. I want you to do it. And so, but yes, we've developed something that it's simple, it's straightforward, it is so logical, but it's rare for somebody to be able to step back and be able to complete it themselves. It's just very, very hard when you're inside the picture to see the frame.
Yeah.
And we use that tool to work through it, and it's really, really, the more we focus in on it, the better it gets and the better the outcomes are. And we've gone from a corporate strategy to a data strategy. It doesn't matter what sort of strategic initiative you're talking about. The model, the system works the same way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now that's great. That's what you're looking for in a intellectual property model, is that you've got carryover across a number of different verticals. That's great.
Yeah.
Now that you're running this, it's up and running. Obviously, you're still growing, but you've got some great success behind you here. What advice would you give to other folks who have their own consulting firms that are selling into that executive level? What kinds of of entries into those organizations tends to work? Let's start there. Like what advice would you give as far as lead generation and sales into organizations?
The first one I would say is don't look for one problem. To the extent that you can operate at a level, serve an executive at a level where you're helping clarify a lot for them, mm-hmm. and your value is adding that clarity, what you will see as a result of helping them clarify is a lot of small projects.
Okay. Yeah.
And what we've developed, I've actually had other consultants that I've worked with and worked out a licensing where, hey, this makes sense for your practice if you want to use it, and it's pretty cool. But I would say, number one, don't go after just one problem. I mean, when I started, Frank, and you probably got stories like this as well, but when I started, I would literally fly across the country to have lunch with someone.
Yeah.
To talk about work that they might have one day.
Right. Yeah.
Now I see your whiteboard over there. I've got something similar. I do this.
Yeah.
Instead of flying, I go and I start their relationship, and the way we've developed is I get paid to basically uncover things that I used to fly across the country to do for free.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really great point. I mean, again, I'm dating myself here, but when I started consulting 20 years ago, we flew everywhere. And the internet existed, but we didn't use it for video conferencing bandwidth. Right. And even if people had the tools, they didn't trust them. There was this element of, you got to be in the room, you got to like shake their hand. Like there's a lot of that was there. And it was very expensive. It was very time consuming. And like, you didn't say this, but I'm going to finish the sentence I think that you were thinking, which is, you would fly all the way across, like I would fly all the way across the country, have lunch, talk about some problem they might have, and walk away empty handed a lot. And that's a really, really tough thing to bankroll, when you're getting things up and running with it.
And it's as a consultant, you want to add value, and we can shorten that cycle to adding value. There's something about it, just, it doesn't matter how determined you are. At some point, you get tired of that old game. Now I've got clients in San Francisco and Salt Lake City and Houston and Washington, D.C. that I've never met face to face.
Yeah.
And
It's a lot easier to do that now than it was back then. And I still think this is an area where people aren't taking a great advantage of. But the quotable piece from what you just said, which I want to call back out again because it's so critical, is shorten the time to adding value. Add value as fast as you can, and make that as short as possible. And in the old style where I had to go out and have a meeting and have a lunch meeting with someone, you could be adding a month and a half to that cycle just to get schedules aligned.
And I think so. It's hard when a lot of people start in consulting and they say, "I'm going to do an hourly rate," and so it's either hourly. And the trap there is they start working. The client says, "I need you 20 hours. And I need you 30. And then I need you 40. And then the reason they hired you is solved, but they like you and you're adding value. And so you continue working on that. And you think, oh, this is great. I'm a consultant. I have my own job. And then they look up and say, wow, I'm paying Frank this much money. I could hire someone. They forgot the original reason they hired you, because you let the value that you originally offer fade away.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that's trap number one that I really try to get people to, don't do that. The second one is to go in and frame up, hire us for 3 months to do this, but then there's no value added services on the back end of that. Mm-hmm. You should always be queuing up the next service. Yeah. And really, it's hard when you start out, but you want to put it in bite-sized chunks. Add value, and then there's a little bit more. If you're satisfied, I'll add more value and more value. Stair step it. Don't just when I started out, you hired us. Most engagements for 3 to 6 months. Yeah. Do the math. It's going to be $100,000 to start working. That's a big hurdle for a lot of people if they don't know you.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah. And it's true that I think most business models, but consulting particularly, is really sensitive to this idea of extending the lifetime value of the customer by wrapping everything into the services. The fact that you guys rolled out a software platform that enhances the overall service, brilliant move. I mean, all it does is it continues to expand you're wrapping your arms around a bigger and bigger component of the client's problem, and therefore you continue to add value, which means you get paid. That's how it works.
I think when you're in consulting, you dream about software, and if you're in software, you dream about it's the grass is always greener. And
right.
I think what we learned last year was, this is not an application that you just hand to somebody and they do themselves. However, it is something that we can use to add value to our clients, and it makes sense for them, and it makes sense for us.
Yeah, well, and there's a nice blend of consulting and software that is essentially a solutions company, and it sounds like that's where you landed in that particular area, is that you've got this value added technology component that is aligned with your consulting. So that's a smart move. So we want to ask you, you've been at this a while, and you've gone through the ups and downs of it. You've learned lessons the hard way, and been really super successful in a number of engagements. As you look back to where you started, what advice would you give the younger Carey just starting out, that you wish, someone had whispered in your ear at the beginning of the journey?
I think the first piece of advice is, when you're starting a business, this is your listeners are probably going to say, well, that's easy for you to say. But I'm not the first person to say it, and it's still true. And that is, don't focus on generating revenue. focus on adding value,
Yeah.
and the revenue will come. If it's just about revenue, then and when you're just starting out, and listen, I did it. It was me and a friend that was an attorney had a work closet, and I rented his work closet. I mean, it was, I get it. And I was sort of I chased revenue for a while.
Yeah.
And then, um, and then '08 hit.
Yeah.
And so when you start in '05 and you chase revenue, meaning I chased where the next opportunity was,
Sure.
not deep relationships,
Right.
and not value with a relationship where we're going to go through, so that when when money shuts down because nobody's spending anything, they'll still take your call.
Yeah.
And they may even say, hey, how do we taper this down so we're still doing some work? It's not the level we were doing. That's the kind of relationship that you'd want to build for him.
Yeah, that's real. I mean, I think you've summed it up really well, which is, first of all, people who are just starting and are feeling that pinch of cash flow, it's really easy to dismiss that advice and go, what do you know? You're successful now. What do you know what you're talking about? But you're right. It's great advice, and it's the right advice, because I had an interview just a couple of weeks ago where with another entrepreneur where we talked specifically about this split between that adding value and understanding that when value is added, everyone's going to get paid. That's that abundance mindset versus the scarcity mindset where it's all about me and I got to figure out how to make the business work, and the client is kind of a transaction along the way. And I have found that I don't care what kind of actor you are. I don't care how good you are at like smiling. If you are all about the revenue, your clients can tell you coming a mile away. They can smell that on you. And it does not work out well for relationships.
Well, one of the things that I did that I don't know that a lot of people do, and I'm grateful I did, is if you're starting a consulting practice, I think it's important to have enough capital to grow your team beyond you.
Yeah.
If a lot of people start by creating a salary for themselves through the form of an hourly wage or some sort of, and that's fine. But for me, I always wanted to be able to go in. I love to drop in, identify a problem, architect a solution, put in the team to execute, and then go to the next one. If I can't pay that team to execute, then I can't do the piece that I love. I always get brought into the execution piece. Right. And so that would be, you didn't ask for a second piece of advice, but that'd be my second.
That's great. No, and your business model sort of requires that.
It does, yeah.
Different skill sets completely from the advisory piece versus the execution piece, and I would say everyone should sort of know themselves, know thyself, in which areas tend to be your strength and your opportunity areas. And I couldn't agree more. Find good team members that can fill in those opportunity areas for you, fill out the ability to deliver value. And that's great. I love that. That's great.
Yeah. Advice. And if you don't have the capital, that's okay. Find other people that complement what you do, make a little pod and refer each other so that you still get that. You want deal flow beyond just you, and you want somebody else's ear to the ground beyond just you.
Yeah. That's great. That's the strategic partnership concept. That's great. Excellent. Carey, we're out of time. Thanks so much I love to continue the conversation because I can talk about consulting for hours, but you're super busy, and I really appreciate the fact that you've carved out time for this conversation.
You're most welcome. Yeah.
One last question before we go. As the audience is listening to what you're doing, want to connect with you, what's a great place for them to start to learn more about you and the work you're doing?
Yeah. So I'm super active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And so Carey, Carey, Rome, Rome. They can find me there. I post 5 days a week. and I do sort of a quick post.
Yeah.
On Thursdays, we're taking a break now. We release a podcast, it's called the Caged Vision. So we talk about helping people who want to grow something that's in their head. They want to get it going. We talk about that. And yeah, Cypress Resources is the name of our website. And yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I have got something, I don't know if it'd be of value, but I've got something I put together called a quick win strategy guide. It's on Amazon, but I would love to share the link for you to, put in the show notes for everybody if they just want something, a mental model for them to think through. How about that?
That's amazing. Thank you. That's really generous. Yes, those links to your both the LinkedIn profile and to that guide here in the show notes page or below the video. If you're out and about listening to the interview, come on back to the show notes page and you can click on through and connect with Carey, his great team, and the work they're doing. Thanks so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for being with us on the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I've been your host, Frank Bria. Just a quick reminder about the free high-ticket program Core Offer Black Book. Contains more than 60 pages of standard operating procedures on how to run your coaching, consulting, or expert-based service business. You can download that for free at the show's homepage, 6to7.show. That's 6to7.show for your free Black Book. We'll see you in the next episode of the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Make it happen. Bye-bye.